We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Vav Amud Aleph in Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 86a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that one should not use anpiknon oil, or some say anpiknon oil, for Menachos, and if one does use it, it's puzzle. And the Gemara now is in the middle of bringing a question from a Brisa. The Brisa also says one should not use this anpiknon oil. Vim hevi puzzle, and if one uses it, it is puzzle, it is disqualified. That part seems similar. However, the Brisa then says, Mipnei shu sraf, the reason why it shouldn't be used is because it's a mere secretion, it's not oil at all, and that is the contradiction, is this oil or not? And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rav Yosef says, Lo kasha, it's not difficult. Ha Rabbi Chia, ha Rabbi Shimon Berevi. One opinion is Rabbi Chia, the other opinion is Rabbi Shimon Berevi. It means to say that the Brisa is following Rabbi Chia, and the Mishnah is following Rabbi Shimon Berevi. Rabbi Shimon Berevi does consider it oil. The Rabbi Chia Zarkale, because Rabbi Chia, he would throw it out, he wouldn't use it at all. For Rabbi Shimon Berevi, metavel, but Rabbi Shimon Berevi, he would dip in it. The idea is he would dip his food in it, and the Gemara says, V'simonech, and the mnemonic to remember this is Ashirim Mekamsin, that the wealthy, they act thriftily. And the idea is Rabbi Shimon Berevi is from the house of Rebbe. He was wealthy, but still he used this inferior oil. And Rashi Ksaviyat explains, Mivnei shu saraf, because it's a secretion, Moel bi'alam, it's a mere secretion, V'hechi choshev le masnisin b'hadei shvanim psulim. Why would the Mishnah even count it among the oils that are disqualified? To mikol makom shemen kari le, because still the Mishnah is referring to it as shemen. The Brisa seems to be saying it's not shemen at all. And then the answer is Rabbi Chia Zarakle, Rabbi Chia held, he threw it away. He threw la'an piknin, he threw it away. Delo chashav le shemen klal, he didn't consider it oil at all. But Rabbi Shimon Berevi, he used it, Ashir and Mekamsin, the wealthy act thriftily. Rabbi Shimon Shaharei ben Nasi, Rabbi Shimon, he's wealthy, he was the son of the Nasi, va'ashir haya, and he was wealthy, komtso va'ochlo kamson atzron, it means to say, komtso va'ochlo, he acted frugally, and Rashi notes that the word kamson is like atzron, one who gathers, that's somebody who's frugal, he makes sure to gather his resources. And Rashi indicates that this is balsam oil, and the Gemara continues, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says, shemen zayis, it refers to olive oil, shelo hevi shlish, that has not attained the third of its ripeness. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanya was taught on the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, on piknon shemen zayis shelo hevi shlish. Again, on piknon is shemen zayis, it's olive oil that has not attained the third of its ripeness. And lama sachin oso shemesher es haseyor uma'adon es habasar. Why do people anoint themselves with it? Because it removes the hair and it causes the skin to glow. And Rashi Ksaviyat explains, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer was taught on the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says, shemen hamor hu an piknin. Shemen hamor actually is an piknin according to Rashi. V'hu shemen zayis shelo hevi shlish. And again, this is shemen zayis. This is olive oil that hasn't attained the third of its ripeness. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ein mevin min hagargrin shenashru b'mayim. We do not bring oil from olive berries that were soaked in water. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan was taught in a Brisa, shemen zayis kavo shalok shari v'shel shmarim v'shel reach ra. Olive oil that's pickled, boiled, soaked in water, if it's of olive sediments, or it's a foul odor. So lo yavi, that should not be brought. Vim hevi, and if he brings that, so puzzle, then it is disqualified. And the Gemara continues, Boy Rabba asked the following question, Hikdisha, let's say a person consecrated this disqualified oil for a karva mincha, Mao sheyilka olav mishum balmum. Again, the same question as we had earlier, is there going to be malchus because it's considered to be like a balmum, like an animal that has a blemish, kevan et deposel kebalmum dummy, since it's disqualified, it should be considered like a mum. Odilmar, maybe ain balmum, ela bebehema, maybe the concept of the balmum is only by animals, and the Gemara says take, the Gemara leaves that as a question. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Shlosha zeisim hein, there are 3 olives, it means there are 3 times of year that the olives are harvested, uvahen, and then within them, shlosha shmonim, are 3 different grades of oil. And the Mishnah continues and explains, Hazayas Harishon, the first time the olives are harvested, Megargaro Barosh Hazayas, he picks the crop from the top of the olive tree, Vikosesh Vinosen Lasoch Hasal, and he pounds it and he puts it in the basket. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Sevivos Hasal, Rabbi Yehuda says he puts it around the basket, and the oil drips on its own into the container beneath. Zer Rishon, this is the first, and then Chazer V'toin B'korah, then in this first harvest, he then puts a beam on top of it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Bo'avonim, Rabbi Yehuda says that stones are used, and that extracts more oils. Zesheni, that's the second oil that comes out, and then Chazar V'tachan V'ton, and then he goes ahead and he grinds it, and he places the beam upon it. Zeshlishi, this is the third. Harishon L'menorah, the first oil that comes out, that's used for the menorah. V'hashar L'menachos, and the rest is used for Menachos. And the Mishnah continues, Hasheni, the second harvest of the olives, Megargaro Barosh Hagag. Here he picks the crop at the top of the roof. V'kosesh v'nosin l'soch asal. He pounds it, he puts it in the basket. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Svivos asal. Rabbi Yehuda says around the basket. And Zerishon, the oil that comes from that, is the first. Toin Bekora, then he presses down on it with a beam. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Bo Avonim. Rabbi Yehuda says with stones. Zesheni, this is the second. Chazar v'tachan v'ton. He again grinds and then he presses down on it. Zeshlishi, this is the third. Harishon l'menorah, the first is for the menorah, v'hashar lemenachos, and the rest of the oil can be used for karban mincha. And the Mishnah continues, Shalishi, the third, Otano beveis habad ad sheyilke. He packs the crop into a vat until it becomes spoiled. Uma'aleyu umenagvo barosh hagag. He brings it up to dry on the top of the roof. Kosesh v'nosin l'soch asal. He pounds it and puts it into the basket. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Sevivos asal. Rabbi Yehuda says, around the basket. Zerishon, this is the first grade of oil. Toin bekora, he then presses upon it with a beam. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ba'avonim. Rabbi Yehuda says with stones. Zesheni, this is the second grade of oil. And chazar, v'tachan v'tan, then he goes ahead again and grinds it and presses upon it. Zeshlishi, this is the third, and again harishon lemenorah, the first is for the menorah, v'ashar lemenachos, and the rest is for menachos. And the Gemara says, Iboy, they had the following question, Megargaro Tnan o Megalgalo Tnan. Is the Mishnah saying Megargaro, which means he picks the olives, or Megalgalo means he allows it to ripen? The Gemara says, Tashma, coming here, a proof to Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa. Shemen Zayis Mizeso, the olive oil comes automatically from the olive. Mikan Amru, from here they say, Zayis Rishon, the first Zayis, Megalgalo Barosh HaZayis, he lets it ripen at the top of the olive tree. V'konso lebeis habad, then he brings it into the olive press, V'tochna Barechaim, he grinds it with the millstone, V'nosno Basal, and he places it in baskets, and Shemen Hayotse Mimenu, with the oil that automatically is extracted, Zehoya Rishon, that's the first, and then Ton Bekora, then he presses upon it with a beam, and Shemen Hayotse Mimenu, with the oil that comes from it, Zehoya Sheni, that is the second, V'chazar Uparak Tachan V'ton, and then he removes the olives from the press and grinds them and presses down upon them with a beam. Zehoya Shalishi, this is the third. Harishon lemenorah, the first is for the menorah. V'hashar lemenachos, and the rest are for menachos. V'chein zayis sheni, and the same is true by the second olive. And v'zayis shlishi on the third. Otano beveis habad, he packs it into the vat ad sheyilka, until it becomes spoiled. Umala l'rosh hagag, he brings it up to the top of the roof. V'yoso so kamin tamara, and he makes it into a pile resembling a date ad sheyizov umeimov, until its fluids flow. V'chonso leveis habad, he then gathers it into the oil press. V'tochna barechaim, he grinds it in the millstone. V'nosno basalim, he puts it in baskets. V'shemen hayotzi mimenu, the oil that comes out from it, zehoya rishon, that is the first. Ton bekora, he presses with a beam. Shemen hayotzi mimenu, then the further oil that comes out, zehoya sheni, this is the second. Parak, he dismantles. Chazar v'tachan v'ton, and again he grinds and he presses down with a beam. Zehoya shlishi, this is the third. Harishon lemenorah, the first is for the menorah. V'ashar lemenachos, and the rest is for menachos. And the Braisa continues, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo yatochna barechaim, he wouldn't grind it with a millstone, ela kosho, b'machteshes, rather he would pound it with a mortar, v'lo hayatoin b'kora, he wouldn't press down with a beam, ela ba'avonim, rather with stones, v'lo hayanosno b'sal, and he wouldn't put it into the baskets, ela l'soch, sevivos hasal, rather he would put it, or he would pack it inside, around the basket. And Rashi Ksaviat explains, Shlosha Zaysim means Shalosh Pa'amim Bashana Malaktin Es HaZaysim. There are 3 times a year that they harvest the olives, Mimnei Shein Misbashlim Levasachas, because they don't all ripen at once. Uvahen Shlosha Shmanim, and in each one there are 3 grades of oil. B'chol Pam Motzi Bo Shlosha Minei Shmanim. Again, each time 3 grades of oil are extracted. Hazayis Harishon, the first. Kilomar Pam Rishona Shemalakit means that first time that he's harvesting the olives. Megargaro Barosh Hazayis, he picks them from the top of the tree. Notul Malakit Gargarin Shabarosh Hazayis, he picks the crop that's at the very top of the olive tree. Shein Mevushal and Tchila, those ripen first. Lefisha Acham Mekader Saleinu Mevashlan, because the sun is hitting those first, and so they ripen first. And then L'soch Hasal, he puts it into the basket. U'misatnon v'yotzei v'hakli tachas Hasal sh'Hashem enofel bo, essentially gets strained through the basket and goes into a vessel underneath. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Sevivos dofnei Hasal nosno mitocho. Rabbi Yehuda says he puts it around the walls of the basket. V'Hashem enzav derech hatafanos. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the oil flows through the walls or along the walls. V'nofel l'shulei Hasal, falls to the bottom of the basket. U'misham misatnon v'yotzei, and from there it's essentially strained and goes out. V'nimsa shemen mizukok, and that makes it more pure. Shapsolos v'apikotim nidbakim bedofnei asal, because all of the part that he doesn't want, it sticks to the wall of the basket. Avolo yitzanem b'shulei asal, don't put it at the bottom of the basket, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Lafisha mesarev shemen u'shmorim v'yotzim v'nimsa shemen achor. Then everything gets mixed up, the sediment as well, and the oil is not as pure. Zeh hashemen hazav me'elov min hasal below shum te'ina nikra shemen rishon shel pamzu. The first oil that flows without any pressing upon it, that's called the shemen rishon. Toin bekora zesim shebasal, and then it presses down with a beam on the olives in the basket. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Bo'avon and Velo Bekora. Rabbi Yehuda says stones are used and not a beam. Sha'akora kvedim otzias hashmorim. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the beam is too heavy and there's going to be sediment that's going to come out as well with a beam. Chazar v'tachan b'reichayim es hazesim. He then grinds it with a millstone. Shatachas hakora v'ton achar kach bekora. Again grinds it with a millstone and then again presses down with a beam. Harishon lemenorah. The first oil is for the menorah. Devo'inan shemen zayizach. We need it to be pure olive oil. V'hasheni kosher lemenachos. The second one is kosher for menachos. Delok zibuzach. There it's not written that it has to be pure. Hazayis hasheni kishemalakir b'pam shniya. The second harvest as hanim soim atam avushalim. We're going to be harvesting the ones that are now ripe. Megargaro barosh hagag. Now he collects from the top of the roof. Malakeres hagargrim hasmuchim lagag. Those olives that are near the roof. Does they say hayu etzel gagoseim? The olive trees were next to the roofs. Ve'osan misbashlim b'shniya. Those are the ones that are the second ones to ripen. Harishon sheyatza kodem te'ina. Again, the first one that comes out before being pressed. Kosher lemenorah is good for the menorah. Hazayis hashlishi. Now the third masha malakir b'pam hashlishis ein misbashlim liyolam called sarchan. The idea over here is what he's harvesting the third harvest. Those really never fully ripen. Sheim ha'anofim shetachas hagag. Those are beneath the roof. Shein hacham and behen that doesn't really get the sun. And Rashi continues, Otano al shem ma'atin shema'asif boas hazesim. He's packing, gathering in the olives at sheyilka again until it spoils. Umenagvo barosh hagag. He dries it on the top of the roof. Mitoch shema'asov b'kli echad arba v'chamisha yomim. Since he gathers it in this one vessel for 4 or 5 days, zav me'elav, it flows on its own. Mehen moel she'eno yafa, and there's certain liquid secretion that's not good. Lefikach, therefore, tzarech lenagvo. That's why it's necessary to dry it. And Rashi Ksav Yad continues in the Gemara. Megargaro tanan. Does the Mishnah say megargaro shalokit garger kan v'garger kan lefishadayin in a mavushal? He picks over here, over there, because it's not yet ripened. Or megalgalo tanan, or maybe it's megalgalo shemanicho barosh hazayis ad shum mavushal me'elav, meaning he leaves it at the top of the tree until it ripens on its own. Tashma, come in here. Shemen zayis mizay, so that means olive oil from the olive. Kilomer, what this means is ha'omer hareolai shemen zayis. If someone says it's upon me to bring shemen zayis, olive oil, yiyah hashemen sheyisbashal v'yismali shamno ba'odo bezayis. It should be that the oil is ripening while it's still in the olive. Dekra kodarish mi shemen zayis zach kilomer mevushal sheyatsa mimeno belotina. What that means to say is that it's ripe to the degree that it comes out without being pressed. Umikan amru hazayis rishon megalgalo v'konsol lebeis habad avalo lebeis habad mamish ad sheyatsa shemen harishon al yedei salim. But he doesn't actually bring it to be pressed until he gets that first oil through the baskets, and then parak parko mi beis habad. He removes it from the beis habad. V'tochna barechaim, grinds it with the millstone. V'tochna beis habad, and again presses it in the beis habad. And zayis shlishi, the third one, lo haya mevushal be'ilan. Again, it wasn't ripened in the tree. Mimneshu tachas hagag, because that's already below the level of the roof. Ein hachama pogasba, so the sun doesn't hit it. And kamin tomorrow, then it's in the shape of a date. So kari rachav milmata v'katzer milmala. The point is that he makes it a pile. It's wide at the bottom and it's narrow on top. And meimav is moel v'sraf sheyotze mimenu. That refers to the liquid that comes, that secretes from it. Kishadach guzeh, and that's when they press against each other. And lo yatochna b'reichaim. He didn't grind it with a millstone. Shemotzias shemar v'achro, because again, that's going to be too much. That's going to cause the sediment to come out as well. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Hagufa kasha. The Mishnah seems to contradict itself based on what we just saw in the Brisa, because kosei shmani. Who's the one that says pounding in the Brisa? That's Rabbi Yehudi. That's Rabbi Yehuda. And the beginning of the Mishnah uses the word kosesh, but then it says tochasal. It says into the basket. Asan l'Rabbanan. That's the Rabbanan. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says it's along the walls of the basket. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hi Tana, that first Tana of the Mishnah, Savar la kivase bechadu palagale bechadu. He holds like him in one regard, but argues in another regard, meaning the Tana of our Mishnah does say kosesh like Rabbi Yehuda, but also says tochasal. And Rashi Ksav explains, Kosesh de Katani Tanakama b'masnisin. This is the Kosesh, the Tanakama of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yehudi de Katani Nami b'braisa, Koshon b'machteshes. That seems to be Rabbi Yehuda, because in the Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda says that one pounds it b'machteshes. And Tochasal de Katani Tanakama b'masnisin, Asikar Rabbanan. Tochasal in the Mishnah of the Tanakama, that's like the Rabbanan. And so again, the Gemara answered, Hi Tanakama b'masnisin. The Tanakama of our Mishnah holds like him in one regard, but disagrees in another regard. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Harishon Shabarishon, the first of the first, Ein Lamala Heimenu. There's nothing greater than that. That is the best quality oil. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Harishon Shabarishon, the first oil of the first oil harvest, Ein Lamala Heimenu. There's no better quality oil than that. And the Mishnah continues, Hasheni Shabarishon, that's the second oil of the first harvest, V'harishon Shabasheni, and then the first oil of the second harvest, Shavin, those are equal. Hashlishi Shabarishon, the third one of the first, V'hasheni Shabasheni, and the second of the second, V'harishon Shabashlishi, and the first of the third, Shavin, those are equal. Hashlishi Shabasheni, the third of the second, V'hasheni Shabashlishi, and the second of the third, Shavin, those are equal. And Hashlishi Shabashlishi, the third of the third, Ein Lamata Heimenu, there's nothing below that. And we will note over here that even though the Mishnah says, for example, Sheni Shabarishon, and the second of the first harvest is the same as the Rishon Shabasheni, the first of the second harvest, but still, as far as menorah is concerned, only the first is considered to be Shemen Zayizach. When we say they're equal, that's just in terms of Karban Mincha. They would be equal grade oil in terms of using that for Karban Mincha. And the Mishnah continues at the two dots, Af kol ha-menachos hayu bedin sheyitanu shemen. Really, all menachos, they should require shemen zayizach. Really, all menachos should require pure olive oil. And we should make the following kal v'chomer. Ma menorah she'ena la'achil, if the menorah, which is not, the oil is not for consumption, to una shemen zayizach, that requires shemen zayizach. So menachos she'en la'achil, menachos which are for consumption, eino din sheyitanu shemen zayizach, isn't it logical that they should require the pure olive oil? Talmud Lomer, but the pasuk says, zach kasis l'ma'or, it says specifically that the pure oil is for the ma'or, that's for the light of the menorah. Ve'ein zach kasis l'menachos, you don't need zach, you don't need it to be pure for the menachos. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis.